Hey everyone, make sure to watch this video till the end and leave your thoughts in the comments.
The room was dim, lit only by the flickering candle on the bedside table. Dust motes danced in the golden light, swirling around an elderly man slumped in a nearby armchair. His eyes, though clouded with age, were fixated on a faded photograph held delicately between trembling fingers. The edges were worn thin, testament to countless hours spent tracing the lines of the image within. The picture itself was unremarkable, a black and white snapshot of a young boy with a mop of unruly hair and eyes wide with wonder standing on the deck of a colossal ship. But for the old man it held a lifetime of memories, both joyous and sorrowful. The boy in the photograph was him, a lifetime ago, on the cusp of a new life. He was just 8 years old then, his name Daniel. Ireland, with its rolling green hills and harsh realities, was all he'd ever known. His family had scraped by, their days a constant struggle against poverty and hunger. Then a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. America, the land of opportunity, beckoned. Daniel's father, a strong and determined man, had left for New York a year earlier, seeking work and a chance to build a better future for his family. He found employment on the bustling docks of the New York harbor and toiled tirelessly, sending every spare penny back home to his wife and children. Finally, the day came when he had saved enough to send for them. The news arrived in a wrinkled envelope, the address scrawled in Daniel's father's rough hand. His mother cried tears of joy and relief as she read the words aloud. They were going to America. A new life awaited them, a life free from the hardships that had shadowed their existence for so long. Excitement crackled through their small cottage, tinged with a bittersweet edge. Leaving their homeland, their friends and family was a heart-wrenching prospect, yet the allure of a brighter future outweighed the pain of separation. They packed their meager belongings, each item imbued with memories and hopes, and set off for the bustling port of Queenstown. It was there they would board their vessel, a ship of such grandeur it was said to be unsinkable, the RMS Titanic. For young Daniel, the journey was an adventure beyond his wildest dreams. He had only ever seen small fishing boats bobbing on the choppy waters near his home. The Titanic in all her majestic glory was like a floating city, dwarfing everything he had ever known. The ship was a marvel of engineering, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. Its towering smokestacks pierced the sky, spewing plumes of dark smoke that trailed behind like the tail of a mythical beast. The decks were abuzz with activity, passengers and crew alike caught up in the excitement of the voyage. Daniel, clinging tightly to his mother's hand, gazed in awe at the opulence surrounding him. Gleaming brass fixtures adorned every surface and plush carpets muffled their footsteps. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, inviting glow upon the elegantly dressed passengers who strolled the decks. There were grand staircases that seemed to ascend to the heavens, and dining saloons that resembled the palaces he had only read about in fairy tales. The aroma of freshly baked bread and exotic spices wafted from the galley, mingling with the salty tang of the sea air. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt a sense of boundless possibility. On this magnificent ship, sailing towards a land of promise, anything seemed possible. The night of April 14th, 1912 began like any other. The Titanic, a beacon of light and luxury, sliced through the dark waters of the North Atlantic. In the first-class dining saloon, a string quartet serenaded the elegantly dressed diners with lively waltzes and romantic ballads. On the upper decks, couples strolled arm in arm beneath a star-studded sky, whispering words of love and longing. Below decks, in the less opulent quarters of steerage, families huddled together, sharing stories and dreams of the new life that awaited them in America. Daniel, tucked snugly into his bunk bed, listened to the gentle creaking of the ship and the muffled murmur of voices from the hallway. He imagined his father waiting for them on the docks of New York, his weathered face breaking into a broad smile at the sight of his family. Then, just before midnight, it happened. A shudder, barely perceptible at first, ran through the ship. It was followed by a sickening crunch, a sound that sent chills down the spines of all who felt it. The music stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that was more unnerving than the sound of the collision. Confusion reigned as passengers and crew alike struggled to comprehend what had just transpired. Daniel, awakened by the commotion, scrambled out of his bunk and raced to his mother's side. Fear etched lines on her face as she gathered him in her arms. The ship, once a symbol of strength and security, now felt vulnerable, a fragile shell adrift in a vast and unforgiving ocean. Word spread quickly. The Titanic had struck an iceberg. The unsinkable ship was taking on water. Chaos erupted as the gravity of the situation sank in. Passengers poured out of their cabins, their faces a mixture of disbelief and terror. The once orderly decks descended into pandemonium as people jostled for lifeboats, their cries of fear piercing the night air. Through the throng of panicked humanity, Daniel clung tightly to his mother's hand, his small body buffeted by the surging crowds. They were separated from the rest of their family in the chaos, their calls for help lost in the din. That was when a hand reached down, strong and reassuring, pulling Daniel and his mother away from the edge of the panicked mob. It belonged to a man, his face etched with concern, his eyes reflecting the chaos surrounding them. He was elegantly dressed, a gentleman of means, yet in that moment, all that mattered was the safety of two strangers. Section 6. The kindness of strangers. "Don't worry," the stranger said, his voice calm amidst the storm of screams and shouts. "I'll get you to a lifeboat." He guided them through the throng, using his own body as a shield against the surging crowds. Daniel's mother, her face pale with fear, clung to the stranger's arm as if it were a lifeline. They reached the boat deck where the crew was desperately trying to load the lifeboats with women and children first. The stranger lifted Daniel into a half-empty lifeboat, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned to help Daniel's mother, but she hesitated, her eyes searching the crowd for her other children. "Go," the stranger urged, gently but firmly. "I'll find your family and get them to safety." It was a promise he could not guarantee, but it offered a glimmer of hope in the face of despair. With a final desperate look, Daniel's mother climbed into the lifeboat, tears streaming down her face as it was lowered into the dark, icy waters. Daniel watched as the stranger disappeared into the crowd, his promise echoing in his ears. Section 7. The American Dream. The hours that followed were a blur of terror and uncertainty. Daniel huddled with his mother in the cramped lifeboat, the cries of those left behind echoing in their ears. They watched in horror as the Titanic, once a symbol of human ambition, slipped beneath the waves, taking with it the dreams and aspirations of so many souls. Dawn broke over a scene of unimaginable devastation. The lifeboats, scattered across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, were filled with survivors, their faces etched with grief and shock. Then a cry rang out, a ship on the horizon. The Carpathia, responding to the Titanic's distress calls, arrived to rescue the survivors. Among them were Daniel and his mother, their hearts heavy with the loss of their family, yet grateful to be alive. They arrived in New York, a city draped in mourning for the lost souls of the Titanic. But amidst the sorrow, there was also an outpouring of compassion and support for the survivors. Daniel, forever haunted by the memory of that fateful night, drew strength from the kindness of the stranger who had saved him and the promise he had made. He vowed to honor the sacrifice of those who had perished by embracing the opportunities that America offered. He worked hard, studied diligently, and eventually built a successful life for himself, always remembering the lessons learned from the tragedy. Section 8. A Promise Kept. Years turned into decades. Daniel married, had children of his own, and grew old, his hair now as white as the snow that had fallen on that fateful April night. But the memory of the Titanic and the stranger who had saved him never faded. He searched for years, scouring passenger lists and historical records, hoping to find any trace of the man who had shown him such extraordinary kindness. His efforts, however, proved fruitless. The stranger, like so many others, remained a nameless hero, his selfless act a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Despite the pain of his loss, Daniel never gave up hope. He instilled in his children and grandchildren the importance of compassion, courage, and the belief that even in the darkest of times, hope can triumph over despair. Section 9. A Final Farewell. And now, as he sat in his quiet room, the weight of his years pressing down on him, Daniel knew his time was drawing to a close. He clutched the faded photograph, the image of the young boy on the deck of the Titanic, a poignant reminder of all that he had endured and all that he had overcome. He had lived a long and fulfilling life, a life forever shaped by the events of that fateful night. He had loved, he had lost, and he had learned that the true measure of a man is not found in the face of adversity, but in his ability to rise above it. With a deep breath, Daniel rose slowly from his chair and made his way to the window. The sun, a fiery orb on the horizon, cast long shadows across the water, painting the sea in hues of orange and gold. It was a sight of breathtaking beauty, a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, life goes on. Daniel opened the window and stepped out onto the balcony. In his hand he held the faded photograph, the edges worn thin from years of handling. He closed his eyes, feeling the cool sea breeze on his face, and whispered a silent prayer for all those lost souls who had been his companions on that fateful voyage. Then, with a heart filled with a mix of sadness and gratitude, he let the photo slip from his grasp. It fluttered for a moment in the gentle breeze before being carried away by the wind, disappearing into the vast expanse of the ocean. And as he watched it go, Daniel felt a sense of peace wash over him, a sense of completion. The Titanic, he realized, was more than just a tragedy. It was a story of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit.